Hey everybody, Christopher here. Happy Friday. I'm having some coffee and I'm wondering to myself a particular question that came up in my mind while listening to another YouTuber, and I'll elaborate on that YouTuber a small amount to give it some context. But here's the question. What happens if Hollywood collapses and disappears? Or more specifically, what happens if Hollywood stops making the kind of entertainment that the general public sees as what we all want? And this particular YouTuber, whose name I won't say, and if you know who I'm talking about, they don't like blind items, but honestly, I'm not talking about this to stir up trouble with that YouTuber or drama or argue with them. I like their channel. They generally always have something intelligent to say or add. But in this instance, they've gone on a bit of a tear in a direction that is odd to me, because it was their own commentary that kind of helped to spawn the current crop of YouTubers that we have that comment and criticize and analyze pop culture, whether it be movies, television, animation, comic books, and video games, just to name a few. But yeah, the general beef goes kind of like this. They don't like middle-aged men constantly commenting and criticizing everything that Hollywood puts out. They get kind of, what's the word? Redundant in their phrasing and infantilize and generally make it difficult for people to enjoy anything, and therefore they're ruining the experience of enjoying films and television, and they take delight when it fails. I want to address all of that, but the big thing that it comes down to is this YouTuber said, if they stop making this stuff, then we won't have anything. We'll have just burned it all down, and these YouTubers think that something will just rise from the ashes, like a phoenix, and phoenix birds aren't real. And I'm thinking to myself, that's, I don't know if the word gaslighting is the right word to use, but it's framing it in a disingenuous way. It's kind of, I guess I'm just surprised, because this person usually has very good points, and suddenly this particular point isn't really holding water with his audience, and so he is framing it in a way that makes him look more right, and kind of cherry picking the worst arguments against his point so that he can kind of bat them down. It's straw manning. And maybe I missed it. Maybe he has made some good points against some other good points. But when you are in control of which comments or arguments that you address, you can always look for the ones that make you right all the time. I made a few comments myself, trying to, even-handedly address some of the points that I thought were wrong. But eventually I thought, why bother? This person is just set, and I don't really feel like spending a bunch of time online typing arguments. But I still wanted to get it off my chest and kind of address these points. So let's address the idea of the phoenix rising from the ashes. Oh, there's one other thing I want to address, is the idea of that they say, they criticize and enjoy the failure of things that weren't made for them. But when you look at this broad spectrum of things that they're not supposed to be criticizing all of a sudden because they should be more grown up about it or something like that. It's a wide variety of things. The most recently is the Mad Max Furiosa. I've never been into the Mad Max stuff. I did watch Mad Max Fury Road, and I didn't actually think it was all that great. I thought it was a glorified stunt show with kind of a whatever story that didn't really make a lot of sense to me. I did watch the old Mad Max movies when I was a kid. They never really held my interest beyond a single watch. But other things like the last Indiana Jones movie, he was saying that the audience wanted a better ending for Indiana Jones, but when you ask them what the better ending for Indiana Jones would be, they give you like, well, he's doing good, still going on adventures, and he's got friends and that are happy to see him. And he thought, well, that's not very interesting. And I'm going to address that as well, because that can be interesting. And there is a reason why the audience had such a visceral reaction to the treatment of Indiana Jones in this last movie, and a bit in the movie before. It wasn't so bad in the movie before, except that the story itself and the concept was pretty weak and didn't really feel like an Indiana Jones concept. So I'll address that too. And then he also said, what was it? Star Wars. They complain so much about Star Wars. Then he made an example, and I think this is a made-up example. I don't know if this is true. Strawberry shortcake. He's like, why are middle-aged men getting upset about strawberry shortcake? So, because strawberry shortcake obviously is not made for middle-aged men, so why should they care? So I'm going to address all of that. Why should they care? Why don't they just grow up and stop live streaming and asking for super chats in the comments so that people can speak to them? I think if you take a good look at this YouTube culture of these live streamers, and you look at why they operate the way they operate, I think all these questions can be answered. And I don't think it's too hard to sort out if you're intelligent. But if you have made up your mind about someone, and you've made up your mind about what kind of people these are, then it becomes easy to paint them all with a broad brush. Again, based on cherry-picking the worst examples and hyper-focusing on them. There is a saying, and I think this YouTuber himself has said this, there's nothing worse than watching somebody argue for something that you agree with badly. And yeah, I agree with that. So I admit that sometimes some of these live streamers, some more often than not, I think all of them at some point can fall victim to this, because we're only human, and some days we get emotional and some days we get performative for our audiences. Those things are only natural, and they're a fact of life, and in themselves, yes, you can critique these YouTubers for that. My overall impression is this really comes down to this individual sees himself as a stoic, and he is intelligent. And I think sometimes he prickles at seeing other people his age act in a way that isn't stoic or is kind of infantilized. And I myself, a while ago, I think it was a couple of years ago at this point, made a video called How to Be a Fan Without Infantilizing Yourself. Because yes, I agree with this. It is possible to get too carried away and infantilize yourself. So I agree with that. But at the same time, I'm going to defend that culture. We need it right now. And that, believe it or not, is a result of markets. As you know, if you follow my channel, I'm very much into economics. I have videos where I've interviewed people about the economics of the entertainment industry, whether it be Sean Malone previously at fee.org and who does Common Sense Soapbox, or Alec Gillis, who is a businessman. He runs Studio ADI, or he used to run Studio ADI. Now it's Studio Gillis. He just recently did the practical effects elements for Alien Romulus, and I may talk about that in this video as well. It may come around to that. As you might have noticed, I'm a huge fan of the first two movies, and there are videos on my channel about why I think the third one doesn't work. But let's get into it. First of all, I want to address this issue of it's not made for you, so you shouldn't have an opinion on it. This person themselves should know, through their own videos, I know this, that these people don't just criticize things because they're fans of every single thing that comes along. These YouTubers can't be fans of every single thing that comes along, but it behooves them to know a little bit about it, because at the moment, the general industry has fallen into disarray because it is under the control at every level, by the way. I'm not saying this is some conspiracy of people at the top of the corporate ladder. It's a mentality of we know better than the audience. And this isn't even political. You can go into the nuances of the political or the ideological, but I'm just going to break it down in a way that I think quantifies the real agenda that is kind of permeated through the entire industry in this cult-like way. We know better than the audience. We are above the audience. The audience is beneath us. What we do is so important, so relevant, and we're going to use it to make change. And if the audience doesn't buy into it, then it is the audience's fault that we fail. But we're going to keep doing it because we are in the right. And it just, again, that becomes an economic problem. Now, most of the entertainment industry is in California, and California's regulations, permits, laws, all are antithetical to business and a free and flowing market. And yet California continues to, the citizens of California, especially in this industry, continue to support that system without acknowledging that it is part of the reasons, part of what's hampering their ability to be profitable. So the other thing is the stories that they're telling. The stories that they are telling overall get support from the industry on every level. And you think to yourself, well, what is, like, the blue collar worker, the grip, or the script supervisor, what do they have to do with the decisions of these stories? Well, that comes in the form of the guilds. They have the power and the support of the guilds, and they all, as an entity, vote and support these concepts that keep getting inserted into films that the audience doesn't want. Ideologically, they all consent to it, and not enough people want to speak out, say, hey, we should be doing better. More and more are getting braver about it, but those are also the people that are leaving and seeking life elsewhere, whether it be outside of entertainment entirely, or the fact that there are now new entertainment places, whether it be Atlanta or overseas. New entities are cropping up, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more later on down the line. But essentially, for the most part, the industry as a whole is going along with this, and they don't have any intention of slowing it down. There are some people in the industry trying to put on the brakes, and I get a sense of that actually through Alien Romulus. I'll come back to that. But, excuse me, I'm getting stuffy. Overall, they keep delivering the same product over and over again. And that product, on a lot of occasions, seems deliberately designed to hurt the audience that was originally showing up for it. We can see this particularly in the franchises, but one of the big things that we also see it in is children's entertainment. Now, this really kind of goes back to what is going on with middle-aged men concerning themselves with animation made for 5-year-old girls. Well, a lot of those middle-aged men are parents. They might even be grandparents at this point. And they are watching it because they have to watch it with their children. And good children's entertainment, and I think I've said this before in another video, but I cannot emphasize this enough. Good children's entertainment is made for both children and adults because they have to watch it together and they bond over it, and it becomes a context for their relationship. The kid knows the joke in the animation, the adult knows the joke, they both know the characters. The characters in those stories become frames of reference that the parents and the children can use to communicate with each other in new ways. And that's what's really important about stories in general. So I'm going to sidetrack a little bit more into what is entertainment and what is entertainment to children. Children are new minds. Their minds are developing. They're much more flexible. Nothing is crystallized yet. And they start to find out who they are and find out how to navigate through the world through play. They play in the schoolyard. They dig in the dirt at first. They're just playing with toys and that sort of thing. And then they start to make friends and games form together. Now, this is a basic psychological principle. It is not something that I'm coming up with. I'm repeating something that I know because I happen to have an interest in psychology as well as economics. It's kind of weird. Through storytelling, by the way, through learning the mechanics of storytelling, I came to psychology and I came to economics because all of these things fit together. But as children learn to play, there's two things that children need to make their play work for them, and it helps their minds develop. The first is everybody has to agree to play the game. If kids are coming together, you might notice that there's like an outcast kid or something like that that can't play properly. They either don't understand the game well enough to participate and therefore they become an outsider, or they don't want to play fair. And that's the other part. The game has to have rules that everyone can agree on, and those rules have to be stuck to, or else people start to realize that there's no point in playing the game because one of the other kids is always going to keep changing the rules on them, and they're never going to be satisfied with the results of that game. That is storytelling as well, because stories are a kind of play. You see people perform on a stage, it's a play. You go up to see a band, you're going to see the band play. You write a screenplay or a teleplay. Play is the idea that we can rehearse scenarios in a safe way so that we can be prepared for them when they happen in real life. There's an Aristotelian idea, Aristotelian meaning it came from the philosopher Aristotle, who wrote the Poetics, which if you want to be a storyteller, by the way, I very much recommend you read the Poetics and take time to understand it, because it's all about how the audience responds to storytelling. But the idea is that, excuse me, again, very stuffy. where was I lost my train of thought. Play, Aristotelian idea. Crap. I remember it now. The Aristotelian idea is that stories should be the highest form of what should be and could be. Now, that's actually a lot more complex than you would think. It doesn't mean that the hero is going to be the ideal and they're going to win every time. But in some way, the story explores how we can reach for an ideal, what it means to struggle to reach that ideal, what we may have to sacrifice to reach that ideal. And in sacrifice, a sacrifice can be you sacrifice part of yourself, bad ideas about how the world is, or, some part of yourself that's ignorant or foolish or selfish needs to die so you can become a better version of yourself. And that's what play is. Kids want to, a boy and a girl might get together and play house. It's a rehearsal for, when you actually do grow up and marry and form a household and a family. Kids want to rehearse that safely. That's why little girls like playing with baby dolls and little kitchen sets, and boys like more rough and tumble stuff like vehicles and guns and that sort of thing, because they're rehearsing their roles in a family unit. They don't know this, they're not saying this, but as they grow, they practice these things as rehearsals for life. And again, with kids' content, the adults need to understand what is in that content so they can use it to guide their children. And, when it comes to Indiana Jones, let's say, it's the same thing, or Star Wars. You may say something like, well, Indiana Jones wasn't all that great a guy. He was kind of a scoundrel and a thief. And, but if you watch Indiana Jones, that's kind of his exterior persona. But when it comes down to what is right and wrong in the Indiana Jones stories, he is forced into a corner where he has to acknowledge that he has to make the right choice. And then it comes down to what he's willing to sacrifice of himself, and he usually in his roguish way goes like, oh, no, I'm going to have to do this. But Indiana Jones does grow as a character. So you can't just say he's a scoundrel and a thief and that sort of thing. So when you see something like the latest Indiana Jones movie, why are people so upset that, they had to kill his son? It's like, and the argument is, and this is the big argument that I have against Alien 3, people go like, well, it's, that's life. That's the world. The bad things happen. Most people grow old and they're unhappy and then they die. And it's like, okay, that's true. But the audience experiences that every day. They know. That's when movies start to become a lecture. You don't spend your days toiling and trying to, if not trying not to suffer, then trying not to suffer needlessly, to finally wind down at the end of the day and go and spend your money to have an experience, an escapist experience where you get something that, the story may have something useful, and it should have something useful, but it should be an experience that is akin to what people seek in a spiritual experience, which is to look upon something a little more wondrous, a little more beautiful, or in the case of science fiction or horror, something a bit more mysterious and enticing in a dangerous way, but engage it safely and rehearse it through the characters in a way that helps you to aspire to something a little bit higher than where you are before. If you want to bring the heroes down to your level and rub them through the dirt and make them feel more relatable in the sense of like, oh, I'm going to see a character whose life is crap too. And I'm not saying life is crap, but I'm saying that life is difficult, and we can learn through our stories to bring some meaning to them, and again, aspire to something a little higher, better ourselves, and therefore better our surroundings. But this is the problem with current Hollywood, is they don't know how to tell good stories, or most of them don't. And we have observed, again, that they hold these ideals in contempt. They make a concerted effort to seek out the creators within Hollywood that do hold these values and are good at telling stories, and force them out, because for them, the franchises don't have any meaning in terms of, what they meant to us when we first experienced them, and why we care about them so much, and why we want to share them with our kids in a way that is safe so they can relate, and they can share, in turn, their entertainment with us. The little kids stuff that is not supposed to be made for us, it's made for all of us. In sharing in it, we have context, and we know that content is going to bring us together. Hollywood currently, for the most part, and not for everything, but for the most part, is seeking to create content that actually it draws lines between everybody and causes confusion. Because if good stories help us to orient ourselves and better ourselves and lead us in a direction that gives us all context for how we interact, a bad story is designed to create confusion, to, again, change the rules of the game on a dime, because they think it's the story is some sort of power struggle between the audience and the author, in which the author wins. The author tells the audience what to think, tells the audience they know better. And if the audience starts to get wise, which is what these YouTubers represent, and again, I'll get back to that, the audience will tell them so. And again, they could choose to just not watch it. And that's what most people do. If they didn't, everybody would be a YouTuber. The YouTube sphere of critical commentary is actually pretty small in terms of the percentage of what's on YouTube. We tend to not see that because, again, we become hyper-focused on it because the algorithm picks up on what we like. And, if you like such and such channel, my video might get suggested. Or after you're done watching this, it might skip to another video that's about Hollywood and all that sort of thing. So the fact is that overall, these YouTubers don't really have too much of an influence on the box office. The fact is that there's a large majority, a silent majority of people that just aren't showing up to movies anymore. And if they really enjoyed them, I don't care how bad the economy is, they would find a way to experience these good stories. And we know this because there are still movies that fan bases are showing up for. The kids really showed up for Five Nights at Freddy's. Megan did really well. And Top Gun Maverick, I think Dune did all right. Yes, the economy does have a certain amount to do with it. But Hollywood survived the Great Depression. As a matter of fact, it thrived during the Great Depression. It did, I believe, lower the budgets of its movies. But people still wanted to be entertained. Now, there are other factors to that, and it's not going to be the same now. And this kind of brings me around to the other part of it, which is, like I said, this idea that the fans are toxic, the fans are ruining people's ability to enjoy movies. No, these people do not have an influence over this that much. And where I work, I go talk to people. They have no idea who these YouTubers are, but they say the same things, like, you're going to go see this film. It's like, oh, it looks all right, but I don't think so, there's just nothing drawing the audience in, and that is a market force. So this is the other thing that there's so many different things that I want to address, and it's kind of hard to choose the order to address them in. Again, this market force is occurring, and the audience is just not showing up. And there may be a small percentage of them who know who the YouTubers are and agree with them. The YouTubers themselves, they're their own industry now. They are a result of this market force. They would not be able to exist if Hollywood wasn't making these bad movies. Now, you may say that incentivizes them to hate everything, but I'm not actually seeing that throughout everything. Like I said, again, you can hyper-focus on a small percent who just kind of are repeating what they heard on other videos, using the same catchphrases and complaining about applying the same complaints to everything in a way that shows that they're not really paying attention to it. But there are still a lot of YouTubers who are very good at articulating when something is well made, there is a good story. I've seen, again, when it comes to the newest Mad Max movie, Furiosa, a lot of people said, yeah, it's good. But the other thing that they said, and I agree with this, is it's kind of more of the same, and Mad Max wasn't really that huge a thing in the zeitgeist anyway. People knew who it was. It kind of became almost, there's an iconic aspect to it where, anytime someone thinks about, apocalypse vehicles, Mad Max is the first thing to come to mind. It's something in the zeitgeist for sure, but, it's not like Star Wars or this huge fandom over it. So, that market force is telling me that Hollywood needs to scale back. And that kind of, Alien Romulus, let's use that as an example. Alien Romulus, I believe, was going to be direct to video on demand, which is an entire other discussion in terms of what video on demand has done to the industry. But it's a lower budget movie. Still, if I had that budget, I could do amazing things. And it looks like Fede Alvarez is doing something amazing with it. But it's a lower budget. It's still a recognizable IP. Looks like they're playing it pretty safe, but they're bringing in a director who does have an edge to them. They can tell a story through it that, through the franchise, that probably be more than serviceable. Will it be original? Will it be way out there? Probably not. But what I think they're doing is they're testing the waters to see, can we spend less money and bring in enough audience to make a profit, even if it doesn't become a blockbuster movie, which is something that we independent filmmakers have been asking ourselves for years now. So I think Hollywood is realizing that we need to rein it back in. Now, will it work? I don't know, and I can't tell the future. And this is something that, again, a lot of people are trying to predict the future at the moment. One of the things that I've heard, one of the complaints about the fans who are supposedly ruining the ability to enjoy stuff, is that the fans somehow think that if we just harp on Hollywood until it collapses, that a phoenix, something new will come to take its place. It'll spring out of the ashes. And I think I said earlier on in the video, I can't remember if I did or not, because this is my second time recording this. But the idea of something just springing right out of the ashes, when you say it in a mocking way like that, of course it sounds ridiculous. No, the default of our society has always been chaos. We build culture and civilization to push back the chaos and create some order for ourselves so we can exist in a safe way. And that includes, our entertainment industry. But our entertainment industry at the moment is broken. It was broken from within. It was broken by bad attitudes, bad storytelling, and corrupt business practices. And a bizarre desire to push the customer away. if Hollywood were to collapse and disappear, it would not be as a result of these YouTubers. It would be a result of the fact that there's just no demand for it anymore. This isn't, what was the analogy? Like, if you don't like the slushies at the convenience store and you harp on it, and then this convenience store closes, then there's no convenience store. And what are you going to do? It's like, first of all, convenience stores sell a lot of different things. They would have to be not meeting a market need throughout the entire store to get to a point where they close down. And if they close down, it probably means they're not going to be missed by many people because they weren't servicing the community to begin with. If the community needs a convenience store on top of that, there would be an opportunity for someone else to come in and set up a better convenience store and compete. Or they might have to drive a little further away. But all in all, it's still the convenience store's fault that they went under because they're not meeting the need of the community. The same thing goes for entertainment. Now, with Hollywood, what need are they supposedly meeting that if they go away, things are just going to be worse for entertainment? The argument being mostly like, oh, it's just going to be a bunch of crappy reality shows and talent shows. Well, those, yes, they exist. There is actually a market demand for those to a certain degree. But now with video on demand, we can watch all the old stuff. People still have collections. I go to the Goodwill once a week and pick up used CDs and DVDs for a couple of bucks each. And I have a library, a collection of media that I like that I can watch again and again. People are watching old TV shows. There's so much content now that people don't really need new stuff. And it's all on demand. We don't have to wait for it to come on television. We can just dial it up and there it is. And so, my thing is, who cares? Who cares what pops up in its place? In terms of how is it going to go in affecting the industry? Well, there is, again, this YouTuber has used this themselves. And I put it in my videos before. There's the monologue by Danny DeVito in the movie Other People's Money. Don't blame me. I didn't kill it. It was dead when I got here. And that's the same with these YouTubers. They didn't kill it. It was dead when they got there. And it just so happens that there's enough people in the world who recognized that there was a problem in Hollywood, felt a deep degree of disappointment, but weren't able to articulate it. So that audience found these YouTubers who were able to articulate it for them. Do we need that much content? Well, here's another need these YouTubers are fulfilling. In this day and age, especially post 2020, when there was that thing that happened that made us all lock ourselves in our home, we all felt isolated. And so podcasts and YouTube videos, that was a way for us to have a communication. And it's not just the YouTubers and the people listening. The people listening become part of online communities where they can share stories and share interests. And as far as the super chats go, I hear the complaint about that. It's like, why are you paying these people money for the privilege of talking to them? They're just nobody YouTubers. Well, it just so happens, if you'll remember, that every time people who voiced an opinion on something that was contrary to what the media wanted you to think or feel, whether it be towards Hollywood or politics or something else, they kept getting those avenues of money cut off. And the people who wanted to hear what they had to say, the people who wanted to hear their thoughts and feelings articulated by someone who could do it, wanted to support these people. And therefore, things like the super chats and Patreon and, a few other payment methods are all these people have. But again, there's a market for it. And you may say these people are being fear-mongered and scared into handing over their money. Well, maybe if Hollywood had done a better job of catering to the audience, the money would be going somewhere else and these people wouldn't exist. But again, a market force occurred and you can't help it. And if you don't like it, just don't give it your attention. Go and create what you want to create. Provide a better product. And maybe this problem that you see will not artificially, but naturally go away and something better will arise. Not a phoenix, but a market force. Because the entire history of economics, whether it be movies or horse and buggy, to automobile or fiber optics, internet, AI, it just so happens that it's always the same. There are big dogs that arise in the market force. They hold on for a few decades and dominate, and then it's the Peter principle. They kind of rise to a level of incompetence. They grow out of touch with their audience, and they start to wane, like Hollywood is waning, like some of these big tech giants are starting to falter and wane, and smaller opportunists come in, and that could be in the form of indie studios, smaller video on demand platforms like Tubi. In the case of comic books, independent publishers like Eric July, crowdfunders, that sort of thing. And they start small. They start grassroots, just like anything does. And they become the answer to the overall gentrification that is taking place. And that's really what these bad stories are about. I'll go back to that for a second because I don't think I finished my point. If you create stories that pull the rug out from under the audience, that change the rules constantly, that ultimately break down any hope of the audience grasping onto something that they can use to orient themselves, and they get gaslit into thinking that the problem is them, not the people creating the stories. If you can trick people into denying that there's any point to having a story that makes sense, or having a story that aspires to something higher than what the audience experiences every day, if you can tell them that it doesn't matter what those stories are, and that they don't have any right to complain, then they have nothing to hold on to. And if they have nothing to hold on to, they can't orient themselves. And if they can't orient themselves, then they can be easily controlled. And that's why it matters, especially in kids' entertainment, because if you do this to children while their brains are still developing, and you mess up those functions that allow them to orient themselves and understand the truth and understand ideals higher than themselves so they can strive for them, then they become even more easy to control. And if you get them at that point, then when they're older, it's going to be a lot harder for them to figure out what's going on. And essentially what it comes down to is there's no quality, there's nothing of substance, there's nothing of value, there's nothing spiritual. It's all materialist. It's all about turning everybody into kind of confused consumers that just, to quote Red Letter Media, which is a channel that I don't actually like, consume product and just wait for next product. Never being fulfilled by it. Never being able to use it as context to relate to anybody else. It's even worse, it's designed, again, to draw lines between people and get them to see each other as the enemy, someone that they should fight against, someone that they should be offended by, or, feel that there's aggression towards them or be aggressive towards them. Everything of anything that is not material is gone, and you might as well just be another cog in that machine. It's really anti-individualist. And so, yeah, you've had these YouTube YouTubers who are reacting to it, and they need to be there. Whether you're annoyed by them, whether you approve of their behavior or not, you've got to be able to point out this stuff. You have to be able to mock it. You have to be able to criticize it. You have to be able to express that you're angry that they're doing this, because as soon as you stop, as soon as you just feel like I should just shut up and take it, they will continue to advance. And they're not done, because what they've already done to young children is going to be there permanently. They'll be back later when they're adults, and it'll seem perfectly fine for them. It's a slow creep. They push, people say no, they back off, then people kind of go back to what they were doing, and then they start to creep again. You have to keep saying no at every turn. It may get redundant. Probably it could be done in better ways. And I think it's up to us to have the discussions about how we can better talk about these things. That's what I'm doing here. I'm trying to talk about it and articulate it in a way that's reasonable. I'm not trying to fight anybody, except I am trying to fight against the destruction of art, because there's this thing. It was a meme. It wasn't real. David Lynch didn't say this, but it was bad Star Wars is better than no Star Wars at all. And that's just ridiculous. And that's why I think to myself, what if Hollywood were to go away? Because bad art is worse than no art at all. But to think that there will be no art, no stories after Hollywood is ridiculous. You can't predict that, especially based on what happened in the past. You may look at the writer's strike from the early 2000s and think about all the reality shows that sprung up from that. But we didn't have video on demand at that time. We didn't have AI. We didn't have a lot of things. The market forces have changed and we cannot predict it. But I tell you this with absolute certainty. There are things that we haven't thought of yet, ways of entertaining ourselves that we have not thought of yet. But they are being stifled because innovation is being stifled by the complete audience capture of Hollywood. And now that Hollywood is imploding on itself, and they killed it, I did a whole video on that, we might get to see what those things are. We might even see a return to analog forms of entertainment. We may see more plays, more concerts, more things that are done outside of the digital realm, as a reaction to the fact that we have so much digital technology now, and it becomes harder and harder to create anything with it that feels special. So if Hollywood went away tomorrow, we might be better than fine. The people in Hollywood that would lose their jobs, they would find their way because they're individuals. Individuals have that ability to find their way. But if we start thinking in terms of like, well, we've got to do something, we can't let Hollywood collapse because all these people, then you're thinking about them in terms of like this collective menace. Markets change. There's probably a funeral to be had, but after that, life goes on. So that's my feelings on it. There's probably more that I could say. And I know I've gone on for nearly 50 minutes now, but I've been thinking a lot about this, and it's going to be just fine if we are allowed as individuals to continue to express what we see in a truthful manner and discuss it and be allowed to be wrong. And, through that, we can continue to maybe find our way to the truth. And from there, who knows? That's the exciting thing about the future. All this doom and gloom about what's going to happen if we lose this or this doesn't work out. It's all just in our heads. Maybe if we're just a little bit more attuned and responsible and try and take the wheel of our own destiny as individuals, we might find something that is far better than we ever imagined. And that's all I'll say. So thank you. I hope that you'll like this video and share it. Leave some constructive comments and subscribe to my channel. I actually am going to go make my own second film now. Please check out my first, which is on video on demand, The Quantum Terror. And yeah, let's see what happens.